There once was a poor little boy named Tom, who lived with his father Canty, grandmother, mother, and 2 sisters in a small house on Pudding Lane in the city of London. Because the room was too small for any kind of bed to be put in, the family had to sleep on the floor. Tom and his sisters were forced to go out begging daily, and they would be beaten severely and starved if they returned empty-handed in the evening. Tom felt so unhappy.
Where is your money you've earned today?
I couldn't even get a dime today. I couldn't earn even 1 penny.
What? No money? Then no food. What a bunch of useless kids.
Tom's neighbor was Father Andrew, and he was very kind-hearted and knowledgeable. Every day, Father Andrew told Tom the tales about gorgeous kings and princes. Tom wished he could live the charmed life of a petted prince in a royal palace. So Father Andrew taught him morality, a little Latin, and how to read and write.
You should go to the Palace of Westminster, where you can see a prince of flesh and blood. Prince Edward is the son of the king. He is there, and you'll perhaps meet him one day.
Father Andrew said to Tom,
Father, I want to be like the princes in the book someday.
My dear son, I will teach you how to be a proper prince.
But, dear Father Andrew, I really want to see a real prince.
Then you should go to the Westminster Palace. Prince Edward lives there, and maybe you will meet him someday.
Okay.
Then Tom stood at the gate of the palace in the following days, hoping to meet Prince Edward. However, the poor boy was always sent away by the guards. One day, when Tom cried loudly,
I want to see the prince,
the guards immediately and rudely snatched him away. Prince Edward sprang to the gate, stopped them, and invited Tom into the palace. The prince was very surprised when he learned about Tom's life. He couldn't imagine how he and his family could live in such a small house. Then Edward had an idea. The two would switch roles for a few days. They exchanged clothing. Now Tom was Edward, and Edward was Tom. The prince went outside, ordering Tom to stay in the palace until he returned.
Hey, Tom, let's change our roles. I will wear your clothes, and you will wear mine. Yes, yes.
Edward wandered around, not knowing where to go. His bare feet bled. Tired and hungry, he wanted to come back to his palace, but he didn't know how to do so. Edward went to the Christ's Hospital, a school which was built for poor children by the king. Proclaiming that he was the Prince of Wales, Edward was thrust into a dirty puddle by the poor children. As night drew to a close that day, the prince wandered on and on. He found his way through the streets to Tom's house to spend the night. Suddenly, he was collared by Canty and brought home.
Boo! Boo! You deserved it! Where should I go now? Where is this Pudding Lane?
Go home now. Why are you still wandering here at this hour?
In the meantime, Tom was left alone in the prince's royal apartment in the palace. He stood in front of a great mirror and enjoyed the luxury of his surroundings. It suddenly occurred to Tom that Edward was gone for a long time. Then he began to feel afraid of being discovered in the prince's clothing. He went out, but quickly stepped back, since there were many guards. The prince was thought to be ill. His sister, Princess Jane, then came to talk with him and bring him to the king, who had a serious sickness. Everyone thought Tom was ill, so they didn't believe him when he said he wasn't the prince. The king then ordered Lord Hertford to accompany Tom to the guild hall to attend a party.
Your Highness, I am not the prince. I am just a poor boy.
Your Highness, what did you just say?
Father, Edward must be very sick to say things like that.
Edward, you are a prince, and will be king someday. You can't say things like that.
The richest nobles of London showed up at the guild hall. They sat at the tables full of delicious dishes and chatted happily. When Tom entered the room, all of them stood up and bowed low before him. When the party was taking place, a messenger brought the news that the king had passed away. Everyone in the hall chorused, "Long live King Edward! Long live King Edward!" Your Highness, the king has passed away.
Really?
King Henry is dead. Long live King Edward!
Long live King Edward! Long live King Edward!
Meanwhile, Prince Edward was brought to Canty's home. Father Andrew tried to protect the prince from the abusive man, but he was beaten unconscious. After a while, when a friend of Canty came and saw Father Andrew was dead, he urged Canty to run away. Canty left home immediately and kept Edward in town. The prince grew happy as he hoped he would see Tom again.
Tom, give me your money. You'll be punished today if you come back home with no money again.
I am the prince, not Tom. Take me to the Westminster Palace. Tom is there right now.
What the heck are you talking about? Cantry, run away! Father Andrew is dead. Is he dead?
When Canty was off his guard, Edward managed to slip away. He then went to the guild hall to meet Tom. Standing at the gate, Edward insisted on entering the hall and kept saying that he was the prince. However, nobody believed what he said. They thought he was mad and threw stones at him. At that moment, Miles Hendham, a kind man who just returned from the front, appeared. Seeing that the prince was brave, he tried to protect the boy. Hearing the news that the king passed away, Miles quickly led Edward through the crowd toward his lodgings in an inn.
I am the prince. Let me in.
Back off, you brat.
He called himself a prince. He called himself a
This
prince.
boy is crazy. Tell him to go away.
I am truly Prince Edward. Why doesn't anyone trust me?
Please stop. He's just a boy.
Miles took good care of Edward. He thought that the boy must have been sick, and that was why he kept saying he was a prince. He felt sorry for Edward. The next morning, when Edward was still sleeping, Miles went out to buy new clothes for the boy. When he returned, however, he knew that Canty tricked Edward and took him. Immediately, he set off to find Edward. Miles found Edward and rescued him from Canty. The man then brought the boy to his home. However, Miles's brother Arthur tried to harm him, and made him and Edward go into the prison. The two were sentenced to the lash, and Miles had a vicarious punishment for Edward. When they were released at last, they turned back toward London. Edward promised to repay Miles after he became king.
When I become king, I will repay you.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Now let's go back to London.
When Miles and Edward arrived in London, they saw the crowded streets with many flags. All the high-ranked mandarins gathered in Westminster Abbey, where kings and queens' coronations took place. In the Palace of Westminster, Tom felt very worried. A soldier told Tom that a man and a boy were having a letter sent to the king. Tom immediately ordered his guards to invite them to come in. Seeing Edward, Tom kneeled down and cried out, "Long live the new king! You returned here in time!" The Lord Hertford asked Edward questions about the palace, and the boy gave all the correct answers. However, to prove that he was the real prince, Edward needed to produce a subject which only he knew the location of. The boy then revealed where the Great Seal of England was. Everything was clear now.
I am back! Your Highness, you have come back just in time.
What is this? It's so hard to understand.
Thus Edward was crowned King of England, and Tom stayed at the palace to be the king's best friend. To repay Miles, Edward helped him regain all the fields and land that his brother Arthur took from him. The king even helped the man get married to a beautiful girl named Edith. Besides that, King Edward gave Tom's mother and sisters a very nice house in the country. They lived together happily forever. For Canty, the wicked man ran away and was never seen again. The story has a happy ending, doesn't it? Kind people will enjoy happiness at last, while greedy people will be well punished. You should be good, kids. Always help and care for other people around you. Goodbye, and see you again.
Dear Tom, I will grant your mother and sisters a beautiful house. Thank you, Your Highness.
Open round.
Little cottage. The children were like the two rose trees in front of the cottage.